Hello students, welcome to the next lecture. The subject is Global Strategic Management. I Dr. Rohan Prabhakar Devale welcome you all. We will start with few terms. First term is what do you understand by global industries? Global industries in which in order to survive, competitors need to operate in the key world markets in an integrated or coordinated way. Industries like aerospace, computers, telecommunication, equipments, appliances, power generations, large industrial projects, insurance and reinsurance, and corporate data transmissions are the examples of what global industries means. In these sectors, it is difficult to sustain competition if one does not cover the whole world or nearly as a market, and if one does not integrate the operations to make them cost and time effective. Global companies. Global companies are companies that operate in the main market of the world in an integrated and coordinated way. The companies like Coca Cola, Sony, and Citibank are the global companies. What do you understand by globalization? Globalization is the phenomenon of the transition of industries whose competitive structure changes progressively from multinational to global. Industries such as telecommunication, processed foods, personal care, and retail are in the process of globalization. Global integration and coordination. We just now talked about the companies should be integrated and coordinated. So we will see what do you understand by global integration and global coordination. These are the organizational structure and management processes by which various activities scattered across the world are made interdependent on each other. As examples, global manufacturing integration implies the specialization of factories and cross shipment of parts between different production sites. Global product development requires the coordination of various research centers and marketing terms. Global account management demands that different country subsidiaries provide a service according to a plan negotiated centrally, etc. Now, for the globalization, we can see this globalization push factors. So, there can be important four factors that we have identified: political factors that reduce trade barriers, social factors like convergence of customers' needs, examples travel, TV, movies, etc. They favor standardization and global branding. Competitive factors like Japanese and Korean companies, multinational and customers, they induce integration and coordination. And various technical factors, that is transport, manufacturing, research and development, telecommunication, etc., reduce the cost of coordination and increase economy of scale. So globalization push factors can be divided into four parts: political factors, social factors, competitive factors, and technological factors. Now we will see these one by one. Political factors: liberalization of trades and investments. The main political factor has been the development of free trade among the nations. Two main organizations have been the source of trade liberalization: GATT, that is the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, now replaced by WTO, that is World Trade Organization, and EEC, to which one may add the progressive opening of emerging nations to the foreign investment. The GATT, which was founded in 1946 by 23 nations, initiated a series of negotiations called rounds, aimed at reducing the tariff concession of create liberalization of trade. The GATT became the WTO in 1995. Next is tele- technological factors like transport, communication, and economy of scale. Another set of push factors for globalization is related to technological progress that lowered the cost of transport and communication as well as the unit cost of production through the economies of scale or the localization of productive capacities and sourcing in low cost economies. Air, rail, and road transport are the use of containers in maritime transport have reduced the cost of shipping goods from country to country as well as in case of air transport favoring the travel of managers. The development of telecommunication has reduced the cost of information exchange between business units scattered round the globe. Next are social factors like convergence of consumer needs. International air transport and the diffusion of lifestyle by movies and TV series has increased the brand awareness of the consumers worldwide. Brands like Sony, Nike, Coca-Cola, Levi are known nearly by everyone. The less cultural and the more technical is the product, the more likely it is can be considerization, standardization, and appeal to masses for the consumers in all countries. VCRs, personal computers, mobile phones or elevators, cranes, robots are products for which national differences does not matter much. Next is competitive factors. In 1960s saw the emerge of Japanese competitors in the market that traditionally has been dominated by American or European competitors. Japanese firms and later on Korean firms adopted a global approach at very beginning of their international expansion. One of the reasons is that did not have many national subsidiaries and their international expansion was occurring at the time of opening of trade barriers worldwide. Right at the beginning, they designing the product for the world market, creating global brands such as Sony or Panasonic, and their efficient production system gave them a cost advantage in electronics and automotive parts. Competitors had to adopt similar strategic postures if they wished to survive. Now, what are various benefits of globalization? The benefits of globalization can be assessed from 2 points of view: the business and competitive point of view, and macro socio-economic point of view. A more general discussion on socio-economic benefits and cost of globalization will be included later in this discussion, while this part focuses on the benefits of the corporation to adopt the global strategy. Now, the benefits of globalization, the business and competitive benefits can be grouped into four categories: cost, learning, timing, and attributes. Arbitrage: cost, learning, timing, and arbitrage. So we will see these benefits one by one. First is, what do you understand by cost benefits? This comes on one hand from economies of scale owing to product or processes standardization as well as increased bargaining powers over suppliers of raw materials, components, equipment, and services. And on the other hand, from the ability to organize a logistic and sourcing network based on location factors. Timing benefits. These are due to the coordinated approach in product launching in early stage of PLC, that is product life cycle. In a multinational setting, each subsidiary is more or less free to adopt products for its own market. This is sometimes called as shopping caddy approach to the product adoption. Such an approach generates inefficiencies in their management of the product life cycle since the optimum volume is obtained only after a lengthy process of product adoption by all subsidiaries. Learning benefits. These occur from the coordinated transfer of information, best practices, and people across the subsidiaries. Such transfer eliminates the costly reinvention of the wheel and facilitates the accumulation of the experiences and knowledge. In Thailand, Unilever formulated the implementation and innovation strategy to produce and market ice creams. The Thai experience served as a template for other countries in the Asia Pacific region, giving the company a first mover advantage. This example illustrates the benefit that can be gained for coordinated transfer of best practices. Arbitrage benefits. These come from the advantage that a company managing globally can gain in using resources in one country for the benefits of another country subsidiaries. These advantages can be directly competitive advantage or indirect cost advantage. Now we will see the benefits of localization. The benefits of localization instead of global integrated or coordinated approach are essentially customer-oriented benefits that give firm an increased market power and ultimately an increased market share. Those benefits are flexibility, proximity, and quick response time. Now we will see one by one. Flexibility is the capability to adapt to customer demands in the various dimensions of the marketing mix, that is, product or service design, distribution, branding, pricing, and services. Ultimately, flexibility leads to customization. Proximity is the capability to close to the market, to understand the customer's value. Quick response time is the ability to respond at once to specific customers' demand. A company business strategy. A company business strategy is a set of fundamental choices which defines its long-term objectives, its value proposition to the market, how it intends to build and sustain a competitive business system, and how it organizes itself. Business strategy is global when a company competes in the key markets of the world and when the business system is made of integrated and coordinated activities across borders. In the case of a Sony Corporation presented below listed how a global strategy has been developing over time. Before that, we will see what do we understand by business strategy. Business strategy at the level of business operating in a particular industry segment. It defines the way which business wants and is able to compete in the market segment. In the market in which the firm operates is global, its business strategy will be global business strategy that defines the way to compete across the world. This is the difference between the business strategy and global business strategy. Similarly, we will see corporate strategy and global corporate strategy. Corporate strategy applies at the level of a company engaged in different business segments. The multi-business corporation, it especially essentially defines the portfolio of businesses in which the corporation wants to be and the resource allocation patterns among those businesses. If the corporation operates globally, then the corporate strategy will be a global corporate strategy which will incorporate the choice of regions and countries in the corporate portfolio. So, global strategy framework can be divided into four parts: global ambition, global business system, global organization, and global positioning. Global ambition is relative importance of region and countries in terms of sales and assets. Global organization includes global structure, global processes, global coordination, and global HRM, that is global human resource management. Global positioning is nothing but the choice of countries and choice of value proposition, whereas global business systems that includes investment in resources, assets, and competencies to create a global value chain. It also includes development of global capabilities through alliances and acquisitions. So this is about global strategy. Global strategy again is divided into four parts: global ambition, global positioning, global organization, and global business system. Global strategy is made up of four major components that we have seen: a global strategic ambition, a global strategic positioning, a global business system, and a global organization. Now we will see one by one. What do you understand by global ambition? The global strategic ambition expresses the role of a company wants to play in the world marketplace and how it views the future distribution of its sales and assets in the key regional cluster of the world. One can identify five types of roles: global player, regional player, regional dominant global player, global exporter, and global operator. All these terms we will see one by one. Global player. Global player aspires to establish a sustainable competitive position in the key markets of the world and to build an integrated business system of design spread over those key markets. Sony would qualify for such a description of its role, as would Unilever, Ericsson, Nokia, Alcatel, Motorola, Shell, Xerox, Canon, P&G, that is Procter and Gamble, and Citibank. So all these are the examples of global player. Now regional player defines its role as it capture a strong competitive advantage in one of the key region of the world, like in North America or in Asia or in Europe, and be a managerial or a relatively weak competitor in the other part. Now, Fiat in automobiles or Barclays would be the example of such an ambition. So these can be said an example of regional player. Now, a regional dominant global player. So these are the company which role is more than a regional player, but it is not yet selling across the key markets of the world. So you can take any example of local Indian company that is not globally operated. Then example of a global exporter. Each company whose role is to sell across the key markets of the world product manufactured or services operated in its home country and who build foreign operations only to support the export drive. The major aerospace and defense companies like Boeing, Airbus, and Raytheon can be classified into this category despite the fact that they have the supporting assets like maintenance, sales, etc. outside their home region. So these can be example of global exporter, global importer. It is company that procures a large fraction of its product components in factories located outside its base market and which concentrates its sales and domestic market. In such a case, the ambition would hardly qualify as global. However, many managerial issues of integration and coordination of activities, both in-house factories and long-term subcontracted, would be quite similar to those that a global company would have to face. Now, global positioning. Global positioning contains and consists of two types of choices: first choice and second choice. We will see these one by one. First choice for global positioning, the choice of countries in which the company wants to compete and the role that those countries have to play in the global country portfolio. Second, the definition of the various value proposition for the product and services of the company corresponding to the type of segments and countries in which the company wants to compete. Now, global business system. Business system design consists of decomposing the company value chain into elements that are spread and integrated across the world. A company value chain is the set of activities that a company employs in order to design, produce, and deliver the value proposed to the ultimate customer. Each company has a different value chain according to the type of industry in which it operates and the degree of vertical integration it has adopted. However, one can distinguish three major generic components of a value chain: innovative activities, productive activities, and customer relationship activities. We will see these one by one. Innovative activities includes research and development, creation, design, and knowledge. Productive activities include procurement, manufacturing, producing, operations, logistics, and back office operations. Customer relationship activities that includes sales, marketing, distribution, product distribution, and various customer services. Now, there are five types of countries where global positioning occurs: key countries, emerging countries, platform countries, marketing countries, and sourcing countries. So, now we will see one by one. What are key countries? Key countries contributes critical for long-term competitiveness of the company owing to its size, growth, or resources available. So these are key countries. Emerging countries. Countries that exhibit high growth rate for a particular industry. These are emerging countries. Platform countries. Countries which can serve as hub for setting up regional centers, like we are having IT hub in Pune. Global factories that are platforms for further development. So these are called as platform countries. Then marketing countries. Countries with attractive markets without being as strategically critical as key countries. These are called as marketing countries. Sourcing countries. Countries with a strong resource base but limited market prospects. These such type of countries are called as sourcing countries. A global business organization would balance the following dual requirements. These requirements are efficiently maintain competitive advantages across the borders, and adapt to local conditions. Now we will see organizational designs. There are three main models of organizational design: global hub, confederation, multidimensional. First is global hub. It is worldwide functional or global product structure. Second is confederation. It is multinational geographical structure. Third is multidimensionalization. It is a matrix or transactional structure. There are three key elements of organizational designs. These three key elements are organizational structure, organizational processes, and organizational culture. The organizational structure includes assignment of roles, assignment of responsibilities, and alignment of power in the organization. Organizational process includes the decision making process, resource allocation process, rewards and appraisal systems in the organization, and planning and control activities in the organization. So these are the organizational processes. Organizational culture that includes the shared values and reward system that the culture was is being adopted by that particular organization. So these are three key elements of the organizational design. Now next part is few definitions, like we will try to understand what is alliance and what is global alliance. So we are moving towards merger and acquisitions and alliances. An alliance is the sharing of capabilities between two or more firms with the view of enhancing their competitive advantages and or creating new businesses without losing their perspective strategic autonomy. So this is called as alliances. A global alliance is one in which the object is either to develop a global market presence, that is global reach alliance, or to enhance the worldwide competitive capabilities of the firm, that is called as global leverage alliance. So this is the difference between alliance and the global alliance. Now we will see this figure various type of international alliances, where the object can be market or the object can be capabilities. And on the y-axis we found this whether the scope is local or whether the scope is global. Now if the object is market and scope is local, so that indicates traditional joint ventures in emerging markets, that is alliances for country market entry. If the scope is local but the object is capabilities, then joint ventures in resource rich countries, that is alliances for country resources access. If the object is capabilities and the scope is global, then one should go for global leverage alliances, that is research and development partnership or joint manufacturing with the alliance. If the scope is global and the object is market, then one should go for global reach alliances, that is geographically complementing partnership. So these are various types of international alliances. Next is framework for the analyzing of the strategic alliances. So framework for analysis of strategic alliances. So that includes into four steps. So we have to ask questions like industry prospects and competitive forces. So what are the benefits of alliances? What do the partners get from it? So for these questions, that is share expectations, we are strategic context and value potential. Here we have to define the scope, then the strategic objectives should be defined, and value creation potential that has to be viewed. After this, the next part is identification of the various issues like partner selection. The question is how workable is this relationship with the partner? So you have to identify partners fit. So whether the partner is strategically fit, whether the partner is capability fit, whether the partner is cultural fit, and whether the partner is organizational fit. So you have to identify various issues. Next is set the agreement for the alliance. Here the question is how do we organize and manage? So this is about the negotiation and design. So here the interface will be studied, the governance will be studied, and the operational scope of the alliance will be studied. The last part is achieving the results. Here the question is how do we work? So this is the implementation part where the integration along with cooperation and evaluation are done to achieve the results. So this is the general framework for analyzing and analysis of strategic alliances. Now we will see the concept of value potential. The value potential of the alliances for the alliance partner is calculated on the basis of the potential benefits it brings to the respective company or companies that involved. In theory, it is straightforward calculation done in only two steps. Step 1, value created by the alliance. Step 2, value captured by the partner. So, the value potential is of the alliances for the alliance partner is calculated on the basis of potential benefits. So, value created by the alliance and value captured by each partner. The value created by the alliance is driven by four factors. These four factors are revenue generated by alliance through the volume of sales. Second, revenue generated by alliance through the ability to command a high differentiated price. Third, future revenues or cost benefits coming from joint research and development products or processes. Fourth factor is cost benefits resulting from economies of scale and scope. So these are the value created by the alliance. These are driven by these four factors. Now, mergers and acquisitions. Deciding on the mergers and acquisitions and value creation process. Theoretically, mergers and acquisitions contribute to enhancing the economic value of the companies involved. The companies of mergers and acquisitions is simple. A merger or an acquisition is justified if and only if the value of the new merged or combined entity is bigger than the sum of the values of independent entities prior to merger. So this addition 1 plus 2 should not be 3, but it should be more than 3. So this is the simple economies of merger and acquisition. So new merged or combined entity should be bigger than the sum of the independent entities prior to the merger. From a strategic point of view, mergers and acquisitions can be created the following type of values: consolidation, global reach, and vertical integration. Now see, we will see one by one. Consolidation of companies operating in the same business area, like horizontal mergers and acquisition, like SmithKline and Picham or Electroflux and Zanussi belong to this category. Next is global reach, that is extension to international markets. So we can take example of Vodafone. Then vertical integration, merging of businesses which are suppliers or buyers of each other's products. This is vertical integration where you are going vertically throughout the supply chain. So the examples can be Frankeler or Toyo Inc. possibly belongs to this category. Next is diversification. Companies operating in different business domains like Sony and Colubial deal. So this is the diversification. So we are now operating in totally different type of business domain. Now, next is options or the acquisition of a firm in a new technology or market to monitor its evolution. For instance, the acquisition by the Swiss pharmaceutical group Ciba-Geigy in early 90s of the Californian company Alza in order to get access to advanced drug delivery system technologies. Now we will see the cross-border mergers and acquisitions are motivated by three factors: consolidation, that we have seen, that is achieving economy of scales, then global reach and competencies of acquisitions, that also we have covered, and options in technologies. Now value creation is short term and long term process. So we will see how value creation is beneficial for short term and how it is beneficial for long term. So value creation for short term process, here tax shield benefits are there. You can achieve financial engineering and assets disposable can be possible. Value creation is long term process. Pooling and sharing resources and assets, enlarge markets in terms of geography and products, and transfer of competencies, including technologies and best practices. So, this is how value creation is short term and long term process. Now, we will see types of economies valuation for mergers and acquisitions include asset based valuation, market based valuation, and cash flow based valuation. So, asset based valuation uses replacement price. Market based valuation uses direct market information, and cash flow based valuation, that discounted cash flow method is being used. So these are the types of economy valuation for mergers and acquisition that includes. Now we will see entry modes. How to enter? From the point of view of a foreign investor, the typical choice of entering a country is based on a combination of two major dimensions. First is the ownership dimension, that is going it alone with wholly owned operations in which the foreigner has full control and ownership or entering into partnership. Next is next dimension is the investment intensity dimensions. Investing in assets and competencies for value adding activities or limiting operations to commercial, development, and administrative activities. So these are entry modes. Entry modes can be low, like intensity of investment can be low or high, and ownership can be none or limited control or full or absolute control. On these dimensions, we will learn. Now, if the intensity of investment is low and there is no or limited control, then arm's length agreement, that is distributor, licensing, then agents, representative, franchisees as correspondents that can be achieved. If investment or intensity of investment is low and you should have full or absolute control, you should go for this technical observatories, representative office, then procurement office, market subsidiaries, and regional headquarters. If intensity of investment is high and you want limited or no control of ownership, then joint ventures with minority, equal or non-absolute position, or consortium partner that can be thought of. And if intensity of investment is high and want full or absolute control of ownership, then wholly owned subsidiaries by greenfield investment or full or dominant acquisition, joint venture in absolute majority like above 66%, that should be achieved. So this is the about entry modes in any foreign countries. Now, factors influencing the entry modes. These entry modes factors can be influenced by government policies, country risk, market attractiveness, strategic objectives, timing, and internal capabilities. So these are various factors affecting the influencing the entry modes, and the output can be the wholly owned subsidiaries or acquisitions or joint ventures or having a franchisee, licensed franchisee, having a office or just agent and distributors. Now, these are some global brands, and you know the country of origin, like a brand like Coca-Cola, United States, then Levi's, United States, IBM, US, McDonald's, US, Sony, Japan, Intel, again US, Kodak, US, Nike, US, Mercedes, Germany, Macintosh, US, Nescafe, Swiss, that is Switzerland, Swatch, Switzerland, and Nokia, you know, it is from Finland. So these are global brands and the country of origin. Now, entry mode, how to enter. Suppose you are already having this global corporate name, and you are developing a global brand name. Then Coca-Cola, global corporate name is Coca-Cola, but global brand name is Coke. Electrolux, then same is the global brand name Electrolux only. Then Heineken, then that is Heineken, or it is known as Mopi. So this global brand name should be easy to pronounce. Those should be similar to corporate name, or they should be associated with the product or service category. So this was about